Imagine a punishment system so theatrical that entire towns were legally required to attend. A system that didn't just kill. It erased identities, destroyed bodies, and weaponized neighbors, children, and even religion itself into instruments of terror. A rumor could end a woman's life. A rumor. No evidence. No defense. No mercy. And the darkest twist? The architects of this terror were not outcasts. They were the most respected voices in society. Today, you're not just hearing history. You're stepping into it. Into the stones, the screams, the laws, and the silence that followed. This is the most systematic destruction of the female body in European history. And fair warning, some of what you're about to hear crosses limits you didn't know humanity once breached. Stay with me. By the end, you won't ask how this happened. You'll ask, how we ever believed it was justice. In real history, Britain cracked under world wars. But imagine a different 1946. Ministers rebuilt, reforms fast-tracked, colonies turned into partners, not prisons. A Commonwealth federation saved the empire. The key theme here is simple: inclusion over rebellion. But every empire, even surviving ones, casts shadows. And that brings us to our world's darker empires, the empires over bodies, not borders. In medieval Europe, once a woman married, she legally ceased to exist as an independent person. Scholars called her a covered woman, her identity folded into her husband's, her body considered his asset, her sexuality his property. Without DNA, birth records, or tests, a man's only guarantee of lineage was total control over a woman's body. Infidelity wasn't a broken vow. It was considered theft, stealing a man's bloodline, alliances, and inheritance. Her supposed betrayal could collapse fortunes, treaties, even kingdoms. So the punishment wasn't proportional to truth, it was proportional to fear. They called it carding or the penance walk. Harmless words, devastating reality. Before dawn, officials forced themselves into homes and dragged accused women into town squares. Barbers shaved their heads brutally and unevenly. Hair was her crown, so shaving it meant unwomaning her before society. Then came the real tactic, the calculated parade. She was marched past her marriage church, her market, her home, her neighbors' windows. Crowds swelled at every corner. And participation wasn't optional. Citizens were fined if they refused to watch. Some threw mud and waste, others bones and stones. Pregnant women miscarried from trauma. Others lost eyes. Authorities didn't intervene. The horror was the purpose. When she returned home, she often found doors locked, children silenced, possessions stolen by neighbors. This wasn't momentary punishment. This was social death by design. If rumors lacked proof, they invoked God. The most infamous method was trial by cold water. Water, used in baptism to wash sin, was believed to reject sinners. Her body was tied in a knot theologically crafted to resemble impurity. Right thumb to left toe. Left thumb to right toe. Sometimes a rope was added, not for rescue, but to retrieve her body later. She was thrown in. If she floated, guilty. Executed immediately. If she sank, innocent, but still drowning. Officials sometimes waited through prayers for minutes before pulling her out. Many died from oxygen loss. In 1194, a woman fell like a stone, pulled out nearly lifeless, declared innocent, but brain damaged. She died days later. Her burial was her husband's responsibility. No one else was blamed. Innocent or guilty, the ordeal itself was lethal theology. Another divine test required women to carry red-hot iron for 9 paces. Her hands were wrapped and 3 days later inspected. If wounds healed, clean, innocent. But infection was almost guaranteed. In 12th century Bavaria, a woman begged to confess. She was told confession alone meant a worse sentence. Mutilation without miracle. She chose the iron. Her hands were amputated from sepsis. She still died. She was declared guilty based on infection and denied burial. Mock justice. Real biology. Guaranteed doom. Records weren't paper-kept for common women. They were flesh-kept. The laws of England and Scandinavia ordered, "An adulteress shall have her nose and ears cut off." Not could. Not maybe. Shall. blades handled by blacksmiths or family barbers. No anesthetic. No bite cloth allowed. Her screams were the soundtrack of justice. Noses were cut to the bone. Ears sliced off. Wounds burned shut with iron. The smell of singed skin hovered across towns like a sermon. One documented case from 1231 describes a woman whose children stood in the crowd, watching their mother bleed, crying for weeks afterward. This was body propaganda, a social scar no new town would ever let her forget. For royals, another terror waited, perpetual enclosure. Margaret and Blanche of Burgundy, married to future French kings, were accused of infidelity in 1314. Their lovers were tortured publicly. But the women, worse. Margaret was locked in a 10 by 10-foot stone cell, with one unreachable slit window, a food hatch at the floor. No visitors, no letters, no books. Her only clock was daylight shifting from unreachable stone. She died there at age 30, after 8 years. Recorded as dying of natural causes. Historians believe her death was isolation itself, the body surrendering to mental exile. This was mercy by medieval standards. Not restoration, not redemption, just erasure by solitude. Now let's talk about the men. A man's adultery only counted if another man owned the woman involved. Otherwise, for him it was just fornication, a confession-worthy sin. Not a death-worthy crime. Women were denied trial by combat. Men invoked it freely. Wealthy men hired champions to fight for them. Women had no champions. Even judges and priests who ordered mutilation sometimes kept mistresses themselves. The hypocrisy wasn't accidental. It was legislated. This wasn't chaos. This was law. This wasn't madness. This was belief. Belief that justice, scripture, and ownership all pointed to the same body, hers. And even today those echoes remain. Slut-shaming, victim-blaming, double standards carved into culture if not law. If the story disturbed you, good. Because history that hurts to hear is history that must never be forgotten. Comment what shocked you most. Like, subscribe. Because uncomfortable truths deserve the loudest spotlight. And remember, the darkest empires are not always drawn on maps. Sometimes, they are drawn on skin.